Welcome once again to another edition of the Brazilian Shirt Name podcast. He's the Legendino over in Rio de Janeiro. Good morning, afternoon, is it there for you, Tim?
Yeah, it's morning with me. And what we're doing today, it's a little bit of Highway 61 revisited, isn't it? Highway USA 94 revisited, because not too long back we looked with Patrick Barkley at that game where Italy lost to Ireland, and now we're just going a few days further on. USA 94, the game which will be introduced by our esteemed guest today, Mr. Matthew Evans. Mr. Evans, sir, introduce yourself and tell us what game we're going to be talking about.
Hi, my name is Matthew Evans. Recently wrote a book on USA 94 called USA 94, the World Cup that changed the game. And I will be talking today about USA v Colombia and all that surrounded it.
Firstly,
Indeed. Yeah,
why did you
game.
choose USA 94 as a subject?
Well, I was 13, nearly 14 that summer, and that was the first World Cup that I properly really absorbed. I remember bits of Mexico 86 and Italia 90, but USA 94 was the first one that really sort of captured my imagination. And when I come to write a book, I thought, well, someone's bound to have already done one, because there was quite a lot of World Cup books being wrote at the time. And when I had a look, there was nothing really. There's articles and stuff, but there was no actual overview of the tournament. So I thought, all right, let's go for it.
Were you also thinking that the next one is going to be in the USA with Mexico and Canada, given it not just historical value, but also relevance?
Well, at the time, there was rumours of they were favourites to host it, but the decision hadn't actually been made at the time. So it's sort of worked out quite well, really.
Well done, all those people in FIFA who've boosted your potential book sales by their choice of World Cup venue.
Thank you to Infantino.
Yeah, what some people remember about this World Cup was that Diana Ross missed an open goal. Yeah. Did you remember seeing that as a 13-year-old? Because you'd have thought that would scar you for life, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, if you look back at it, it should have been a retake, really. There's quite a lot of encroachment. If you look back at it, it should definitely have been pulled back.
VAR would have sorted that out, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I thought the thing that would scar you for life was the fact that even when you miss a penalty, the goals fall apart. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They get hit so directly that they just fall apart as if by magic. No, that aside, though, the game that we're looking at has tragic consequences. And I know as well, I was well into my 30s at this point. I know that it still bothers me. The consequences, it was really difficult. I don't think I'm quite shaking it off. We'll talk about the consequences in a minute. Does that play part of what you remember about this match as well?
Yeah, I mean, it was 10 days after the game. Obviously,
the tournament is still going on.
Yeah, the tournament was still going on when the news broke. It was just going into the knockout stages, and I think there was such a feel-good factor around the tournament at the time. The attendances had been good, and there'd been a few good moments. Obviously, the hosts were doing quite well. And then there was the Maradona news. He'd failed his drug test. And then I think it was something like 2 days later, the news come back about Escobar. And it just really, it did really put like a dampener on the tournament as a whole, I think.
There are things that you can blame football for, but not this. And the best line, I think, on this comes from the Colombian coach, Maturana. Football didn't kill Andres Escobar. Society killed Andres Escobar. Anyway, why did you pick out, of all of the games from this tournament, why did you pick out this one for us to have a look at?
Well, obviously there was no home nations in USA 94, and I adopted the USA as my team. I had the denim shirt with the stars. I find
that bizarre, because maybe that's an age thing. And I was 29, and a lot of my generation kind of resented the USA coming into our, coming over here, coming into our thing.
Oversexed, overpaid, and all of that. Yeah.
At least they ain't got this. At least this is all right. They're getting this now. They're getting this. And a lot of people that I was at, just wanted to see the USA get slaughtered.
It might be more to do with, like, as a child, I was a big fan of, like, the A-Team, the Goonies, things. I think there's a lot of them, the late 80s, early 90s, there was a lot of American culture sort of infiltrating UK TV and things like that. So I think as I've been 13, I think I've seen America as like this, wild and wonderful place, the other side of the world. And I don't know, I just think something about
that's how they do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how they've done it.
I fell for a hook, line, and sinker.
I know they've done that since the 1950s at the very least. This is the American dream. You're too young to remember Joe Strummer singing, "I'm so bored with the USA." But what can I do when you're watching Yankee TV 24/7s and Yankee villains on the TV work 7 days a week because villains in America. I've got it all sussed, all twisted now. But
there's obviously so much of our culture comes from there, isn't it? And there's so much that I'm grateful. I'm not an anti or even anti-American in that respect.
You're never a punk. You're never a punk. Mate.
Well, I kind of I was just a little bit too young, but I grew up with all those.
Anything else,
with all those attitudes.
But you like to wear clothes that didn't have holes in them, you see. So you like to wear clothes.
I didn't have the choice. I didn't have the money. So lots of my clothes had holes.
And you like to wear clothes where people didn't phlegm on them as well, didn't you?
Yes.
God, oh my goodness gracious. Anyway, as ever with the Brazilian Shirt Name podcast, we look at an iconic game from some time in the past and revisit it. This game, the 22nd of June, 1994, USA versus Colombia. And a lot of people thought Colombia were going to be the dark horses of this tournament, didn't they, Matthew?
Yeah, they had the Pele curse. You said that he had them down as one of their favourites. I think it was all to do with the way they beat Argentina in Buenos Aires 5-0 in the qualifier. I think that sort of raised a few eyebrows, especially in Europe. And they sort of thought there was another emerging force in South American football. But, I mean, at this stage, like Colombia, they hadn't even won like a Copa America. And they were being talked about as being, world champions. So I think talk was a bit... They were nowhere near ready to be world champions. But as hype is, in the press and football media at the time, they were seen as dark horses, definitely.
I agree that they weren't ready to be champions, but I also think they were a great side.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at their record from when they get beat, I think 2-1 by Argentina in the Copa America of '91. So for the 3 years going up to this World Cup, something like 33 games, including another Copa America that only get beat on penalties, and World Cup qualifiers where they win in Argentina that no one had ever done before, not 1-0, but 5-0. Something like 33 games with one defeat. They were a class act. They were a brilliant side. I mean, and going into the World Cup, the warm-up games, they beat, without conceding a goal, some shower called Nigeria, Peru, El Salvador, Northern Ireland. I remember seeing that Northern Ireland game. They pissed all over them. And Greece, without conceding a goal. So they were kind of justifiably amongst the serious sides. And they were really, really good. There's two problems. One is a specifically footballing one, that their style of play, and this is so apparent in these two opening games, their style of play is absolutely dependent on René Higuita. It's totally dependent on them. I've got a book that the coach wrote before Italia 90, but after they qualified for Italia 90, when he goes on and on and on about the importance of René Higuita, both psychologically and tactically, because Higuita is their method of play is based on short passes. They'll pass you to distraction. And in order to do that, you've got to have the lines of the team close together. And Higuita allows this to happen because the defense can push up very high, close to the midfield, because he'll take responsibility so many yards from goal. And it all went wrong dramatically against Roger Miller when it, you know, the moment when it couldn't go wrong, but usually game after game after game, it went right. And Higuita is also the one who just instills the whole team with confidence because nothing phases him. Not even that mistake against Roger Miller. You know, held his hand up. Yeah, it was a mistake, big as a house. If it was in the same situation, I'd do the same thing again. Nothing phased him. Nothing ever phased him. That's why he did the Scorpion at Wembley. You know, it's Wembley. What do I care? I can do it. And the coach, Maturana, in this book, the team starts at Wembley. They go to Wembley for a friendly in 88. And no one's ever heard of him. And they're brilliant. It's a 1-1 draw. It's a good game. Their goal is scored by Andres Escobar. You can more or less tell the story of this Colombia team in between these two goals from Escobar. The one that gets them a draw at Wembley and the own goal in this game against the States. Higuita at Wembley, when they're thinking, this is the cradle of football. They'd never done anything like it before. And Higuita just is wandering around like, you know, it's his back garden in Medellin. So the loss of Higuita, who is in jail at this point, absolutely ludicrously unfairly, as the Colombian state subsequently recognized. Higuita, Colombia is mad at this point. This is the second one that we're getting onto. Colombia is just insane. It's La Colombia. It's the crazy country. And the kidnappings are going on all over the place. And the first time I visited the country, I went a few times in the noughties. The first time was 2001, and it was still really edgy, really edgy. And there's people getting kidnapped all the time. This is still happening in 2001. But the kidnapping is a major industry. And Higuita is called in to intermediate in the negotiations. And he helps with his prestige and so on. And he gets a bung for it. And because he's profited from kidnapping, that's a criminal offense. So he gets put in jail. Now, that's so important to this Colombia story because you take him away, you take the player who is the psychological backbone, and as we see clearly in this game, tactically absolutely indispensable because they are representing a nation which is absolutely falling to pieces. And they are the most joyful manifestation of this nation. They're representing everything which is good about this nation at a time when it's falling apart. They were receiving death threats even before they qualified for Italia 90. But as they get more and more in the global spotlight, the thing gets ramped up and up and up and up. And I think that the death of Pablo Escobar is a crucial part of this story as well, because Colombia is very, very regional. And it really needed airlines to get it because of the territories some of the territory is so difficult. So it's very, very regional. And they were seen as quite a Medellin team. Coach, assistant coach, so on. They've won the Libertadores, first time a Colombian side has ever won it, Atlético Nacional of Medellin in 89. And Pablo Escobar is the Medellin cartel. And when he dies, he's their big protector. When he dies, he's assassinated, they become so much more vulnerable to the other cartels. And what's going on in that hotel in the build up to this game is wild, isn't it? It's just off the scale of lunacy. After the first game where they played fantastic football against Romania. It's a great, great game, the Romania game, the first one. But they run into Hagi. And Hagi runs into the goalkeeper, Oscar Cordoba, who's a good goalkeeper, but he can't do what Higuita does. He doesn't know how to be a sweeper keeper. And he's continually confused. You've already mentioned the clash. Cordoba spends the entire campaign, should I stay or should I go? And he never knows. And he's caught in no man's land all the time. And Hagi senses this and does him. But they play a fantastic game. It is. I remember watching it on TV, the English pundits, it was Steve Coppell or something. They were saying they really do play the beautiful game, this Colombia side. It was a great game against Romania. but they fell foul of Romania, who were a terrific counter-attacking side. And so the pressure is now on the USA game. But I remember sitting down to watch the game in the expectation that Colombia is just going to blow them away. That was my expectation watching it. And it kind of could have happened. Despite everything that was going on, I wonder if Colombia had scored the first goal and they came very, very close. I think that this whole story could have been so different. The width of a post and a goal line clearance changes history.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, like I said, the Mike Sorba, where he sort of chested it against the post and then he blocked the rebound and it was clawed off the line. I think it was only like 6 minutes gone. And you think, like I said, what a different sort of game that could have been. Then I think that the nerves and everything would have just gone. And you may have seen, settling down, and you could have seen it maybe a 3 or 4-0. But yeah, going back to like the build up to the tournament, after the 5-0, I think the Colombian FA sort of seen that they could take this team around the world, get some money spinning friendlies going. I think they sold packages where fans could travel to the States and stay in the same team hotel, which is just, think about that today. It's just not happening, is it? Yeah, I mean, obviously, like I said, in the December, I think September was 93 was the Argentina game. I think December was Escobar was killed, wasn't he? And like I said, I think Medellin had just descended into even more of like a lawless city. There's a definite power vacuum, and there was, people trying to sort of make names for themselves, I think.
Looking at the game itself, as we've already indicated, it's USA that go 1-0 up because of, it's not a mistake, is it, by Pablo Escobar? When you watch it, and I've watched it over and over, sorry, Pablo Escobar, Andres Escobar. I watched it over and over.
They're getting in that space behind the right back, aren't they? The States.
He doesn't have any choice, does he? He does not have any choice because the American strikers come from behind him. He has no other choice but to intercept the ball. The goalie arguably has just moved over to his left. So he's left the goal just open, and I just can't see Andres Escobar being at fault, and yet ultimately he's going to lose his life for this moment.
It's maybe time to talk about it from the USA point of view. And is it part of your book, Matt, a kind of conspiracy theory of, because in order to host the World Cup in 1994, which was a huge thing for FIFA, wasn't it? It's a massive thing for Havelange and FIFA. They want the States to do reasonably well.
Yeah.
And Mexico is kicked out of Italia 90 on a underage, in underage tournaments, they're age fiddling.
Yeah.
As a result of that, they're not kicked out of underage tournaments. They're kicked out of Italia 90. Yeah. That's a very drastic punishment, but that means that the States, who haven't played a World Cup since 50, they can go to Italia 90. And you clearly, I remember watching them. The first game, they got massacred by the Czechs. And part of it was they were naive. They didn't know how to tactically foul. By the second game, I think it was Italy, the second game, they've wised up. So that experience of going to Italia 90 has already meant that they're going to be better in 94. And then they bring in a coach of fabulous experience, a great charismatic figure, but also a very, very good coach, Bordo Milutinovic. And you see what he's doing with the side. It's just basics. When they have the ball, make the pitch as small as possible. When we have the ball, make the pitch as big as possible. And that's how they keep getting in behind the Colombian right back and then exposing Escobar to the danger of the cross behind him. Is this a part of your book, Matt, the way that the States are prepared to do well or to not be humiliated on home soil?
Yeah, there've been like huge changes because Italia 90 they performed so badly. obviously the coach was a big thing. There was quite a big debate going on in the States at the time. They wanted an American coach. They said there was good college coaches that could have got the job, but they wanted a professional, experienced, preferably with a World Cup coach. So that's when they got Borja. Obviously, he'd been in charge of Mexico in '86. So we knew how to prepare a host nation that hasn't got to qualify. He'd obviously did really well with Costa Rica in '90. But also off the pitch, they changed the complete setup of US soccer. They built a new training facility in California, and they set up like a 17-month residency camp. So they brought players in, and they were there all day, every day, 17 months. Like of Alexi Lalas, players like that. They'd never played club football before. I think something like I think there was something like 4 or 5 players that had clubs. All the others had come through playing at Mission Viejo. So yeah, there was like a huge change in the approach. They sort of went from being like an amateur setup to a professional setup off the pitch and on the pitch in those 18 months, really, from when the facility was opened.
You mentioned the likes of Alexi Lalas, who people will remember from this.
Remember him scoring against England the year before, and Rodney Marsh going mad on the commentary. The wild man's done it. The wild man's done it.
So they stopped short
thinking we're going to sack Graham Taylor, and we didn't.
But also they stopped short of using the cat weasel comparison to Alexi Lalas. But also on the Colombian side, I mean, you're talking about arguably a golden generation of Colombians.
Oh, no doubt about it. Yeah, it was a fantastic generation. Really good generation.
Tino Esprilla, obviously people know
him
from Newcastle.
That was beginning to become a problem because they had this midfield that was pass. And Esprilla had emerged and he wanted quicker service. So there are some kind of tensions there between the midfield and the strikers. Especially when, Esprilla goes off to Europe and he's being fed quickly for him to run onto. And he was a bizarre player, Esprilla, as he himself said, because he always looked like he was going to fall over. There's a bizarre running style. But it didn't quite, I don't think it quite knitted the midfield, the Valderrama, Rincon and Esprilla. And it was something that they did talk about. And I think there were always tensions there in the camp. But it was a great side. And as I'm the assistant coach there, Gomez, whose brother is a part of the story, who he later took Ecuador to their first World Cup in 2002, and he's everything in the build-up was, we're going to learn, because he's saying to his Ecuador players, you have no idea of the pressures of the World Cup, how playing in a World Cup is different from anything else. And he'd say about this Colombia side, outside the conditions of a World Cup, this Colombia side could beat anyone. Inside the conditions of the World Cup, when it mattered, forget about it. They couldn't do it. It was too big for them.
I think Maturana said to me, if the World Cup would have happened 3 months after the Argentina game, they'd have probably won it.
Yeah, I think the same pressures would have the same as you talked about, the madness in their hotel, when they're swanning around like they're Pretty Boy Floyd being treated as gods by their own supporters. It doesn't really make for a focused professional build-up, does it? No,
because I read something like that. The players, there was agents there. They were all talking about which clubs they were going to be signing for. There's rumours Escobar was going to go to AC Milan, and I think that they were more sort of thinking, well, we're going to do well in this tournament because everyone thinks we are, and then we'll get our nice big moves to Europe and afterwards.
And that's part of the interesting narrative of this, isn't it, Tim? That a lot of these Colombian players, they were playing at home because they could. There was enough money. Narco dollars, as it's described as nowadays, there's enough money in the domestic system for them to think, we can make a living out of this at home without having to go abroad.
Yeah, and it's the second coming of Colombian football. The first one was late 40s, early 50s, where they set up this pirate league outside FIFA, so they didn't have to pay transfer fees. So that they got some of the best players in the world, Di Stefano going up there. And they had a fantastic league then. And then in the 80s, with all the drug money, the massive amounts of drug money that were going into it for a number of reasons. And one is that the drug barons, they were genuine fans. They love football. Another is it's good PR, and it was great PR for the to build football pitches in a place where the state doesn't do anything for you. It's easy to see why the drug baron who builds a pitch is going to be protected by that local community. And there was lots of that going on. And it's quite often the footballers there, and you see this perhaps even more with boxers, but I think it applies to the Colombian footballers. They're a little bit outsiders anyway, most of them. Doesn't apply to Andres Escobar, who's very educated, very middle class, and is something of an advisor to him in a business sense. And the tragic thing of this, when the Colombian players afterwards said that when they took the field to play the States, they were looking around thinking, I'm going to get shot. Where's the bullet going to come from? Now, what was going on in a hotel before? Barabbas Gomez, the brother of the assistant coach, had played against Romania. And there were messages coming in from the cartels saying, don't play him. He doesn't play. This is, again, because Gomez was seen as Medellin, because he's the brother of the assistant coach, and the coach, and it's all Medellin. So it was the Cali cartel backing against them. Or anyway, the players, some of their families have got armed guards in Colombia. So the death threats that they were having, even before they qualified for Italia 90, some of that they could wave off. They can't wave it off anymore. They are genuinely scared. So they do take the field worried. As we're saying, I think in the beauty of football, had they scored first and relaxed, I think the whole thing could have been different. But when they go behind, everything really plays on them. When the coach takes the two strikers off at half time, he takes Asprilla off at half time just to shake it up, just to try and do something. But there's this feeling that they're on the slide now. And I remember watching it, hoping that Colombia are going to wipe the floor with them. And the penny drops, this ain't happening. It really isn't happening. Last game against Switzerland, when they can't qualify, they're excellent again. They're great again. Pressure's off, and you begin to see the tournament lost a lot, I think, from Colombia not progressing. Although Matt will probably argue it was good for football in the States, and that's probably the case. And on the plane home, Asprilla sits next to Andres Escobar, who in this educated, gentleman, advisor way, Escobar says to Asprilla, you like going out, don't you? Don't do it. Let's keep our head down for a little while. And Escobar loses his life as a result of not following his own advice.
I think Escobar could have stayed over in the States as well, working for Colombian TV. His parents were on holiday. I think they were in Nevada time when he was shot. So he could have caught up with his family. He could have stayed out there and worked for Colombian TV. But in his mind, he thought, well, I've done nothing wrong. I'm quite popular back home, and it's my city. I'm going back home. And cost his life.
Yeah, we've talked about the first goal, own goal by Colombia. The second goal, though, and that was in the first half, so second half now. America seems to have had, USA seem to have had their tails up in any case, and they'd bossed most of the game between the first goal and
Colombia have got
goal.
possession, but the States, they make the pitch small and they make it innocuous possession. And when the States break, they make the pitch big and they keep getting in behind the line and down the and down the flanks. I think that the coach, for me, I don't know if you agree, Matt, but I think this is one of Bora's finest hours. I think this is he planned this game magnificently.
Yeah, well, I think in the first game with Romania, Colombia sort of playing into the hands really by they play through the middle. They don't really use the flanks. And obviously Romania hit them on the counter-attack. I mean, I'm not sure, you obviously know more about counter-attacking football, defending against it for the South American side. Would they have been used to playing against counter-attacking sides?
No, and when they beat Argentina 5-0, they were the counter-attacking side. and just everything worked for them. So the Romania game was just like totally different. You know, now you're the counter-attackers, and this is where the absence of Higuita is so big, because Cordoba is just all over the place. I vividly remember watching it, and dear old Ray Wilkins, because everyone's having a go at Cordoba. You know, he's having a mare. Very good goalkeeper, but he can't be Higuita. He's having a mare. And I remember dear old Ray Wilkins saying, to be fair to him, and I'm thinking at this point, you know, he's going to defend him. You know, to be fair to him, what he is a terrible decision maker. And so Ray is right. But he was spot on, because Cordoba is trying to make decisions that he can't make. He can't be Higuita. And it really shows on the second goal when he's caught in no man's land, isn't he?
Like the USA, they played Fernando Clavijo at right back, and he's like 37 years old. I don't think he played a match in months. And Bora put him in because basically the way Colombia played against Romania, they that's how they defaulted against the States. They tried to play out wide to start with, but it was almost as soon as they went behind, they just reverted back to type. Yeah, they definitely did.
Well, I've often thought that Valderrama and Rincon kept their own score, not based on how many goals you get, but on how many times you can exchange little 1-2s and little flicks. I think they're keeping their score like that. They could be very frustrating, but I loved it when it worked. I mean, the game against Germany in '90, when admittedly Germany have already qualified, it's the last group game, but they couldn't. They were just utterly bamboozled. You know, this team that's going to win the World Cup, they couldn't lay a glove on Colombia. They spent 90 minutes chasing Colombia with Valderrama and Rincon going tippity tappity, tip tip tap tap tap. This team, you've got to watch it. I think listening to its soundtrack, which was the salsa of the time. You know, the way that salsa is so repetitive. You know, the bass is really repetitive, and it builds up a hypnotic rhythm. And their football was exactly the same. But if you can nullify that, if you can stop them threading the dangerous passes, and it's just exchanging passes in front of you, let them do it. And I think that's what the States did.
I think if you look at the second goal as well, obviously there was a bit of luck with the first goal, but if you look at the second goal, you know, it's like it started at the sort of like left back position with Balboa, and they just cut through. They switched the ball to the right hand side. Beautiful ball through from Tab Ramos. Obviously, Cordoba, with his terrible decision making, came out again, and Stewart just knocked it past him. If you look at that goal again, it's such a great move, so quick. You know, to say that Colombia were the football playing side, if you like, I think that was a really probably one of the best goals America have ever scored.
So your 13-year-old self was jumping up and down on the settee saying USA, USA.
Well, if I remember rightly, I think it kicked off about 1:30 midnight here, so I'd have watched it in the morning before school. But yeah, definitely, I'd have had my denim shirt on, yeah.
No bunking off, despite what Vickery wanted you to do there, to watch it live and direct. So what about the consolation from the Colombians? What kind of a goal was that?
Well, they seem to sort of come alive in the 90th minute, Colombia, really. Tony Miola in the USA goal, he'd made a few saves, nothing spectacular. He'd just been solid, really. Maybe he stood out a bit more, his performance, when he looked at Cordoba at the other end. But yeah, he'd made a one-handed save, and then it was just a tap-in, really. But there was still something like 2 minutes on the clock, but there was no sort of, Colombia are back in this. You just, like Tim said, it was just sort of sliding, really, they were just sliding into defeat. They did, like I said, show a bit of urgency, but it was far too little too late.
But there's no real sense when they score of, you know, we're still losing, you know. Come on. Yeah. There's a little bit of celebration going on, but, you know, the focus surely then is, come on, let's get this game restarted. We need another one.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, there was no other chances after that. It was just, I think it was 2 minutes. They played out 2 minutes, and then said at full time, the Colombian players were just straight off the pitch, straight down the tunnel. And obviously USA players went and grabbed the flags in the lap of honour, and it was as if they'd won the World Cup. Not just won. Well, say it was their first win in 44 years in the World Cup. So I suppose there was some celebrating to have.
It is their moment from this tournament, isn't it?
Yeah. They kind of needed, this is the irony of this game.
Yeah.
This World Cup needed USA to beat Colombia, didn't it?
Yeah, I think it did. Yeah. Well, probably it's beyond that, isn't it? Football in the United States, not just the tournament. Because the idea is you're going to launch a league, isn't it? Which ended up, the idea was the league was going to start in 94. It didn't. It got put back a couple of years. Had the USA been humiliated in that World Cup, do you think MLS would have started at all, or it would have been harder to launch? I imagine.
Yeah, I think it would have started because the wheels were already in motion. But I think that speaking to people when I'm writing the book, they said that it's always been a popular sport in the USA, but more like a grassroots level. It was sort of getting it up to that next level. Really, it was getting it from being like a participation sport to being a sport that people would go and watch, would go and buy tickets. And obviously in the next round against Brazil on the 4th of July, the whole of the country knew what was going on. The players had been on the Tonight Show and things like that from the back of the Colombia game. So I read a quote from Alexi Lalas. He said, like, in the build up to the World Cup, he was on an aeroplane and there was an older lady sat next to him. He said, "Oh, what do you do?" And he said, "Oh, I'm a soccer player." So he said, "No, what do you do for a job?" And he said, I'm a soccer player. And he said she didn't even realize that you could make money you can make a living out of being a soccer player. And there was the famous clips of people didn't even know the World Cup was going on. And I think as the tournament progressed and as the hosts did better, I think that sort of did grow. So I agree with you that it was huge for the sport in the country as a whole, and the knock-on effects. Obviously, we're still seeing today. They've got the tournament again in 2026. Another US national team player signed for a Premier League club yesterday. We've got a US manager in the Premier League. There's more and more players going into the big leagues in Europe. So I think you can look back. You can look back to USA '94 and in particular this game. Even reading things about like Clint Dempsey, so he remembers watching the game and things like that. The effect on the country as a football nation, if you like, I think it does all sort of come from this game.
Do you think that they remember it as the victorious moment rather than, somebody like me remembering it as the game that cost another footballer his life?
I think obviously you can't talk about the game without obviously mentioning what happened afterwards. That is sadly part of the story. From a pure footballing standpoint, it is a massive starting point, I think, for the football that we see today. But like I said, sadly, that what happened is part of the story.
There was just so much random gun violence in Colombia. And I had a gun pulled on me there. I think it was in Cali. It must have been 2003. You could have pulled the trigger. You know what I mean? I ran off, which probably wasn't the correct thing to do. But I just fucking pegged it, man. And I got away with it. I mean, I've never been sure of the extent to which this was premeditated, targeted, surgical precision, or just yet another banal situation where, as a result of people having guns, someone gets killed.
Yeah, wrong place, wrong time. Yeah, because I think at the time the initial news was it's related to the drug cartels. They lost gambling money and things like that. But yeah, like I said, it could just been a case of wrong place, wrong time. Like I said, I don't think we'll ever fully know the story.
Should we have a quick look at the soundtrack of the match, if you like? And now that we've told people the tragic consequences, maybe some of those tunes are somewhat ironic. For example, Love Is All Around is at number 1 with Wet, Wet, Wet. Clearly the charts, I'm not saying that the charts reflect in any way the death of Andres Escobar at all. But you look at that now, you think, well, different world. Love is all around. Stayed at #1 forever.
What was the 13-year-old Matt Evans getting down with his bad self to at this time?
Well, if you look at the charts, sort of, there's the likes of the Prodigy, Shed 7. So we're sort of getting into sort of indie Britpop sort of era, and I was in the process of growing my hair into like a nice little bowl shape. Beatles anthology was coming back. Oasis had been in the charts that year, so I was gradually turning into a full-on indie Britpop kid. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see you with that haircut. Losing it to Prodigy. But there are some other sweet stuff in there, though. Janet Jackson, Anytime, Any Place. Do you remember that?
No, I remember that. All for One, I swear, that's in there. I remember that.
Yeah, Aretha Franklin, Willing to Forgive. You weren't. Yeah, I couldn't see you doing the Aretha Franklin with that haircut.
E17.
Yes, of course. That's up your street.
Baggy jeans and big puffer coat on.
That was up your street at that time and all.
It was popular in my school. It was popular in my school. Yeah, not with me.
Okay.
I'd been sat out the way with me Walkman on, probably listening to the Beatles.
Salt and Pepper Shoot.
Yeah. Remember that.
See, everybody loves Salt and Pepper.
Well, it has to be a song about oral sex in the charts.
He had to go there. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying
I had to go down. I had to go down that way.
Yeah, let's move the conversation on to. There's quite a few things.
Well, Man United. Come on, you Reds.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Were you listening to that at the time? I didn't know anybody.
Are you a United fan? I've been trying to do your accent, and the word Warrington is coming into my mind. Am I being fair?
I live about 25 minutes away from Warrington. I actually live in North Wales.
North Wales, but Warrington ain't a bad shout.
No.
I'm taking a bow.
Yeah. Do take a bow.
There's a little bit of Manc, and there's a little bit of Scouse, and there's a little bit, you put it all together and you get a grooving flavour.
You're absolutely right. But I'm presuming that you were a Red then, were you?
No, I'm actually an Ipswich Town fan.
Oh, obviously, yes.
Obviously.
Yes.
Yeah. So you have to explain that one to us.
So what would you do? Yeah, indeed, do.
Just it was round about 93 when the Premier League had just started. I picked a team, and it was Ipswich, and here we are 28 years later, still in North Wales. I had a season ticket and everything.
That is the way to do it. No, that's the way to do it. That's the way you used to do it. You picked a team and you stuck to it.
Yeah, but there's a family link or some geographical thing where you were just a blindfold and a pin.
Yeah, people say to me, is your dad from there? Did you live there? No.
It's hard
to have driven a tractor? No.
Find them on a map when I pick them. Yeah.
Listen, I live with a Nigerian who has barely ever been to Liverpool, and he's a flipping Red. Can you believe it? Through and through and through and through. And I've said to him, I've suggested that he should go to Liverpool at some point. At least he can reference Liverpool. But in the old days, what you did, the rules of the game was you picked a team. Lucky for you if your parents had already passed down a team to you. Lucky for you. However, if they hadn't, you pick a team, and you're not thinking about how you're going to get to the home matches, Tim. You're just thinking, that's my team. And then you realise, oh my goodness, I should have picked something a bit closer to home. Growing
up in North Wales, in high school, everyone supported Man United, Liverpool and Everton, obviously being in North Wales. So yeah, I think it was just a thing of trying to be a bit different, I think. And yeah, I've had a few pounds in the pot.
Are you a fan of the Welsh national team?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, remember watching games with my dad on like BBC Two Wales when they used to play at the Old Arms Park, and there'd be about 3,000 in there. I remember watching like Hadji absolutely dismantle them like 5-0. That was in the lead up to 94. Obviously, the Paul Bowden penalty miss. Yeah. Finally,
very excited by the World Cup.
Yeah. I said my dad. He was 11 the last time they were in the World Cup, so he's got no memory of seeing them in a World Cup or anything. So yeah, pretty excited. Yeah, it should be good. Hopefully, give a good account, like in the first Euros. Yeah.
So, is there going to be a game in maybe Wales, England, that could be as important for Wales as USA Colombia proved to be for football in the States?
Possibly. I think Welsh football is already at a good level now, I think, from the organisation standpoint through to young players coming through and players that are in the 11 playing for, well, not just 11 in the squad, playing for, top European sides. I mean, think like so Gareth Bale and Aaron Ramsey, a couple of years ago were playing for Juventus and Real Madrid. I mean, that'd been unheard of, when I was growing up. You'd have the likes of Mark Hughes and Ian Rush, etc. But to have players playing for top European sides, it was unheard of. So yeah, I think if Wales can beat England, it'll certainly take it on another level, definitely.
So we're not going to the USA. We didn't want to go there anyway. Give your book a plug.
So my book is out on Pitch Publishing now. It's called USA 94, The World Cup that Changed the Game. It's available from all your usual suspects. So go and buy it.
And chapter 11 is the one that we've been focusing on in particular on tonight's or today's Brazilian Shirt Name podcast. Why is it called the World Cup that changed the game? I mean, I know the pun that you're pulling, but in which way did it change the game?
To read the book to find out, Dotun.
Thank you. Matthew Evans, what a pleasure it is to speak to you, mate.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. Thank you.
Cheers.